Oh, the decision, the drama, the waiting game. Welcome to NFL Live. You hear that tick-tock, okay? That's because we're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers, his future in the NFL. Check this out from our Vikings reporter, Kevin Seifert, today, reporting that the Minnesota Vikings are moving past their discussions with free agent quarterback Aaron Rodgers, leaving second-year player J.J. McCarthy atop the quarterback depth chart as the offseason practices approach. Okay, then. I'm glad you're with us today. Jeremy Fowler is here with all the news that we have to get to. Louis Riddick, Booger McFarland, plus Matt Miller join in a bit as well. Jeremy, what else can you add to the situation in Minnesota?
So, Laura, the Minnesota Vikings discussed the possibility of Aaron Rodgers extensively over the last few days and weeks. And so sources I talked to throughout that process thought it was possible but unlikely because they're committed to J.J. McCarthy's development. Well, now they have decided, let's shelf this for now. Move forward in the spring with McCarthy as QB1. Let him get his footing, go through the offseason workouts, see how things go. They haven't totally shut the door on Rodgers if he's still available in a few months. And look, that sets the stage for a potential waiting game of epic proportions if he wanted to go that far to potentially land in Minnesota. But right now it looks like they would be looking more for that QB2 bridge option, somebody like a Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston that are still out there.
All right, so we'll continue to keep our eye on Aaron Rodgers, but let's zero in on the Vikings a little bit more. Louis, you were on the desk at last year's draft when McCarthy was drafted. Remind people of the skill set that he does bring to the table in Minnesota.
Yeah, Laura, I think he fits perfectly regarding that skill set with what Kevin wants to do up there in Minnesota, and that is really be a very extensive run, heavy play action type of passing team that can really push the ball down the field, you know, on the outside lane and in the middle of the field off of different, you know, various route combinations. And look, I think at Michigan, when he was asked to throw the football and he was asked to push the ball down the field, he was asked to get outside the pocket, he was asked to execute full field reads, he was able to do those kinds of things. And that's why I think, you know, that coupled with the kind of progression that he showed during the time that he has been in Minnesota before he got injured are some of the reasons why they have nothing but the utmost confidence in him and really in their minds feel comfortable in the fact that they did invest a number 10 overall pick in him and want to move forward with that and don't want to disrupt that, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, we even saw some of it on the field before he got injured. You saw the potential there and what we may see in this offense going forward. Now, as for what's next for Rodgers, Jeremy's starting that timeline. Here's Adam Schefter with a little bit more this morning. He says, quote, nothing related to Minnesota has altered Aaron Rodgers' timeline. One source monitoring Rodgers' potential decision about the 2025 season said this morning that the free agent quarterback still, quote, is in no rush at all. So, Jeremy, what are the options for Rodgers at this point?
So, Laura, from what I'm told, the Pittsburgh Steelers, New York Giants have standing offers out to Aaron Rodgers, and so they wait. The feeling around the league is that Pittsburgh would be ahead in this scenario, that he would likely land there. But Aaron Rodgers, this is his first foray into free agency in his 20-year career, and he's a unique personality, shall we say. So nobody really knows outside of his inner circle what exactly he's going to do. Maybe this is a 10-hour decision because he's got those offers out there. If he wants to go to Pittsburgh, he can do that right now. If he wants to wait on a wild card like Minnesota, he could really bleed this out over weeks and months. So I don't expect that largely, but at least that's a wild card that he could tap into.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where the teams like Pittsburgh and the New York Giants kind of have to take back control of the wheel of the bus that's going down the highway here and say, hey, look, okay, so we obviously have made it well known that we would like to bring you into the fold and have you be our bridge situation and then see how it plays out from year to year, you know, from that point on. But if you're not going to do that, then they have to obviously look at the rest of what is left in the free agent market and then considering what their draft options are and come up with a strategy for coming up with a long-term answer, which is something that both of these teams have to do anyway, regardless of whether or not Aaron would be there. They both need long-term options. This just kind of like speeds up that timeline or really like makes those conversations even more critical right now instead of going, hey, look, you know what? We have a guy in place. Now we can kind of like take a breath and then kind of formulate what our draft strategy is. Well, now it's going to be like, if I'm them, I'm thinking, okay, who do we think potentially we can get? What is the fit for our organization? Does this seem like a viable option? And are we trying to force something that we don't necessarily want to force simply because we need it? But they really have to have some in-depth conversations now because of his willingness to go ahead and say, hey, look, I'm in no rush.
Yeah, to Lewis's point, my sense right now, and again, all this is fluid, but my sense is the Pittsburgh Steelers might be willing to wait a little bit. The Rodgers is their target right now. New York Giants are in the same boat, but do they get impatient? I think that's the team you look at in question because they've already visited with Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco. Do they just say, we're going to cut our losses and go with a veteran here?
They also, of course, have that high pick in the draft at number 3, so they have options there potentially at quarterback. I'm alluding to because C.J. Stroud was under siege last season. Houston ranked outside the top 20 in pass block win rate, sacks allowed, pressure percentage as well. On top of that, the offensive line ranked 31st in run block win rate. We got Matt Miller here with us today as well. We'll get into the draft a little bit more with Matt, too. But, Louis, you like this move?
Yeah, simply because they need more bodies and they need someone to really kind of like come into the fold here and really like inject some physicality. You see that run block win rate metric right there. I mean, that is something that Cam has always been good at, going back to his days at Alabama, to his days in Jacksonville. At one time when he was with the Jaguars, he was the go-to guy in terms of the side of the line of scrimmage that Doug Peterson wanted to run behind because of his ability to come off the ball and really establish a physical presence, which is something I'm sure that Joe Mixon is saying, yeah, we could use some of that down here in Houston. So, yeah, they need to continue. This is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the kind of thing that they need to go ahead and build out and really kind of retool in regards to their offensive line. There's a lot of work yet to be done. Yeah,
as we were seeing them, in free agency, moving on from some of that O-line, Matt, we're thinking, all right, they must have a plan here. They're going to rebuild the O-line in the draft. See Cam Robinson here. But what are their options in the draft?
They should still rebuild this offensive line through the draft. I don't think Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, and Ed Ingram are the fix for C.J. Stroud in that offense. So I do think at pick number 25, they're going to have some options. And one of those guys is in-state. Kelvin Banks from University of Texas, who was a 3-year starter at left tackle for the Longhorns. He allowed 1 sack in each of the last 3 seasons. But when I talk to folks around the league, they think he's going to be selected in the 20s. You would think left tackle, 3-year starter at Texas, 1 sack each of the last 3 years, he's going to be a top 10 pick. But there are some concerns about foot speed. I like Cam Robinson. He is better in the run game than he is in the pass game at this stage of his career. So he could very much be in play there. He's never played any position other than left tackle. I know we're quick to say, oh, he'll just play right tackle for a year or guard for a year. I do think with Kelvin Banks, you could maybe put him at left guard for a year and then eventually kick him out to the left side if you needed. But he is, in my opinion, he's the best true offensive tackle in this draft. But every team I talk to says he's probably coming off the board in the 20s.
Yeah, fresh off their new deals in Cincinnati. Here's what they said.
I want to win a championship, and I feel like we can definitely win it here. So the money thing is not really the big factor. It's just really being here with the guys and for another 4 years and just trying to win that championship.
I like Cincinnati because it gives me the opportunity to come here and focus. I'm not distracted out here. It's not too many things to get me, off pace out here, and it's strictly what I'm focused on. That's really tunnel vision for me to play football. So, at the end of the day, the food's not the best. We could work on that, but I'm from New Orleans. I'm not used to the food yet.
All right, so Jamar's not a Skyline Chili fan, apparently. All right, with the wideout contracts done, all eyes turn to Trey Hendrickson and his future in Cincinnati. Jeremy, where do things stand there now?
Yeah, Laura, so Trey Hendrickson's agent and the Bengals have remained in contact really over the last week, reigniting talks to try to find a long-term deal that has been elusive over recent weeks because of the explosion of the pass rush market. The Bengals have made offers, just not commensurate with his skill set and with the way this money's gone well above $30 million per year. So if Hendrickson can't get that deal from the Bengals, he still wants to be traded. There is trade interest, I'm told, but the Bengals have not shown an eagerness to want to move him. It would take a lot, probably a first-round pick, for them to move off their stance. So right now, it's a stalemate. I do know this. I've heard this from several circles that, and sometimes you hear players say, well, I'll just sit out this year and it's posturing. I actually think he would strongly consider sitting out and possibly do it if they don't get his deal done. He's due $16 million this year. That's just not quite enough compared to where he should be.
Yeah, his numbers, undeniable. So I believe that in Mel's latest mock, Matt, he had Shamar Stewart, the Texas A&M product, at 17 for the Bengals. But let's assume they try and add to the defense either way in the first round. Who's a guy you like that could be available to them at 17?
Yeah, if they can get Trey Hendrickson locked up. If they don't get that done, I think we have to look at defensive end. But assuming they're going to pay him what he's worth, I would look at the secondary. It's an area where they have thrown draft picks, guys like Dax Hill coming out of Michigan, but they don't have that playmaker in the secondary. I look at South Carolina's Nick Eamon-Wari, someone who could be off the board as early as The Miami Dolphins at pick number 13. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. He had 4 interceptions last year, 5 pass breakups. He plays like Derwin James did, coming out of Florida State. He's a hitter. He can be an enforcer. And we were just talking about the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. When you have offenses like that in the division, I think you have to. How do we stop a Lamar Jackson? Well, Nick Emmanwori is the type of defender that can stop them. And we know what Cincinnati has on offense. They're going to score points. They did that last year. Now having someone like this on defense to where he could be that equalizer, I think is something that's very important. It's a good defensive end class. Maybe we see them go that route in round 2 or round 3, regardless of what happens with Trey Hendrickson. But I think Emmanwori, if he's on the board, would be that difference maker in the secondary.
Yeah.